Hello, and welcome to the NoFruitPodcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Maurice.
And this is Kafa.
We thank you for tuning in today. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Hello, everyone. How y'all doing today? It's your host, Maurice.
And Kafa.
Hey, y'all. We are glad to be back in the house. You glad, Kaf?
I certainly am.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're not glad to be still in the house. We will still love to be able to go out and meet and greet and socialize and everything else. Am I right?
You're right.
So, but I hope everyone is taking care of themselves. I hope everyone is being safe out there. We are definitely keeping you, our community, the world at large. We keep everyone in prayer every day.
Amen.
Because a lot of us are struggling. So, but in that, one of the things that we're going to talk about today, and I've been to a lot of webinars and a lot of seminars during this little break that we've had, and talking about changing things that the church needs to change up a little bit. So we're going to come to you with a topic of, does the church needs to change the menu? Does the church need to change the menu? So, Kaf, when you think about that, what comes to mind? Just cold. Just what does that mean to you?
I guess churches have a menu. They have an order of service, or they have a certain, menu or types of ministries that they normally offer. And I guess when you're saying change the menu, you're stating that, hey, some of those items would need to change,
yes,
or need to be, delivered on a different platform or a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Some restaurants offer everything in a sit-down type of a menu, and sometimes because of this conditions that we have, they have to change their menu and offer things to go.
Right.
So that's what I kind of gather from this topic that you are sharing.
So that's one of the things that was mentioned about restaurants changing their menu. The person stated that the restaurants, they change their menu, roughly every couple years, just so they can stay relevant and stay up on who their customers are. Whether it's demographically, for age, for sex, whatever it might be, they just try to change with the times.
Mm-hmm.
So, so the question is, does the church really need to change with the times? I know that there's been a lot of churches that had, to be honest, during this time, those that were not in a digital realm,
right,
have had a great
call.
challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
They had a great challenge with this digital piece. They could tell how far behind they were with some of their contemporaries. And I think there's a lot of them are still struggling with that change.
How so?
I think sometimes social media gets a bad rep sometimes. Because you hear so many negative things. And unfortunately, when you have our leader in the White House who talks about, people don't want to get a bad tweet from him, so it puts social media in a negative place. So, and then they're aware that other people have put out their personal business and have gotten jammed up, whether they had boyfriends or girlfriends or a whole nother family across town. Like just some of the conversations I've had with some of these other pastors, they're like, look, everybody's business is out there. I don't want mine out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think now that we are in this true digital place, because even look right now, like we're out of coins. Like they're saying, you got to pay everything with a card right now. You can't even use cash.
Right.
So I think that the church as a whole, not saying this denomination or whatever, I think the church as a whole has to change up how they're portraying Christ and the ministry moving forward. It's not business as usual anymore. The traditional stuff is not going to catch the younger people that they were struggling to catch in the beginning. They were struggling to catch. Most of them were struggling to get younger people anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And now here's a time for you to get that group, and you're still struggling because that's not who you really want to cater to. So those are just some of the things that I see as far as just trying to change up the menu. Like, they're struggling really with tradition. I think that's one of the bigger things between tradition, social media, and what it looks like, and just any other personal issues they have with putting their business out there.
I mean, from what you're saying, I think a lot of it has to do with growth.
Mm-hmm.
When we grow,
mm-hmm.
we become uncomfortable.
Right, I get you.
So in order for something to grow, it has to become uncomfortable. It has to stretch a little bit. And I think this time, churches, as well as ministers, as well as lay folks, like all of us have to stretch forth a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
We all have to do a little bit more than what has been done in the past.
Right.
So with all of that, hopefully we are changing and doing more.
Mm-hmm.
And with doing more, we will have that growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we also have to be careful not to be fearful. The Bible says we shouldn't be fearful, and nervous and apprehensive about doing this.
Right.
And again, I know for me growing up, some people didn't do anything in media at all. Again, back in our day, we didn't have social media, but we just had media.
Right.
And folks were... I had some people who were holiness, and they didn't watch TV. They didn't watch the news because that was the devil.
Yeah.
That was the enemy planting seed within your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And, you would begin to think that everybody out there is dying. Everybody out there is getting shot. Every house is catching fire, all those things. So they didn't look at that. I wonder how they handle this now
right.
In reference to it, but they may have small group gatherings instead of doing things via social media or any type of media, internet or whatever it may be. It may not be social media. They may have a website and they're streaming the information that way. But I think, again, we as Christians and we as the body of Christ and we as the church need to be careful moving forward, because some of the things you were saying, like, hey, people are not wanting this change,
right,
because of their own flesh. In other words, they don't want people to know this about them or know that about them.
I mean, my thing is, like, if you don't want people to know, don't do it. To some degree, I mean, I know that sounds simple and whatever, but
but even some of the personal things, some people just don't want all of their business out there, and it could be all positive, but they may not want pictures of their kids and want to know.
And I agree with that.
That they were fat and chubby in high school. Like, they may not want everybody to know that because we are human. And we do judge, unfortunately.
I mean, I agree with you. I think the key, when you really sit down and think about it for a second, let's be honest, there is very little that's not out there. Even though people think that, hey, just because I'm not on social media, I'm not on social media. No, most people are.
Mm-hmm.
Because, one, you don't know who's taking pictures of you. When you walk in and out of stores and things like that, you do have cameras almost everywhere.
Right.
So your face is out there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want people to think that it's not. They are. Just because you don't have a direct social media account connected to your name doesn't mean that it's not there. So I do believe that we need to really revisit how we're looking at our information and how it's being portrayed. Because what you can do, you can flood social media with all positive. Granted, you might have one negative thing come out and you feel like all your work has been erased. But you're going to have a good majority of people that's going to say, hey, you have done great. You have done some good work. And I think there's a phrase that someone had said the other day that only what you do for Christ will last.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the mindset you're going to have moving forward. And as you're doing that, understand that some things are going to have to change. If we serve a Christ that flipped over tables and things like that, that wasn't very conventional. That wouldn't be someone that you would think that, hey, he sits and is just meek and humble and all that stuff all the time. So sometimes you do have to do things that's a little radical and a little earth-shattering, to some degree, to make a difference. That's my opinion.
Okay. Well, what do you say to those who come back at you with this change and say, well, God is the same today, yesterday? For those traditionalists that are out there, hey, that worked for me, growing up, and I want to continue that tradition.
Again, you can, if that's the way that you would like to go, that's fine. In this particular workshop that I attended, they were stating that if you want your church to grow, if you want to, in 10 years, know that your church is going to still strive and still live in that particular community, neighborhood, block, you're going to have to revisit how you're moving ministry. And especially for those that are in the inner cities, because a lot of inner cities, the demographic is changing.
Mm-hmm.
So they do not necessarily worship the way we worship. Not saying they don't worship at all. They just don't worship in the same manner that we do. And when I say we, meaning African Americans, because I can't say, I mean, I can go another route and say, hey, different denominations, they worship differently also.
Correct.
They most definitely do. But I believe that African Americans worship from, this is, again, my own opinion, my own experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we worship from a place of being put down and oppressed, where those that are not us can worship in a more free state. And that doesn't mean that we're oppressed by the outside world. Sometimes we oppress ourselves with what we have on. Some people don't want to mess up their brand new $100 shoes because some people think church is a fashion show. You get what I mean?
Right.
Some people have on these hats that look like UFOs. So they're not really. Everyone is not always in a real place of freeness.
Mm-hmm.
Then those that do come as you are, quote unquote, you're, in a lot of places still, people still do not feel comfortable in that mode either.
And again, I think that's what this pandemic is it's shifting that. It's
mm-hmm.
changing that.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the menu, even if the menu hasn't changed and your church can't change the menu and you want to be traditional and you want to still do the same normal call to worship and all of those points,
mm-hmm.
The venue has changed. We're no longer going into a building
right
to provide that menu. So the ladies in the big hats and the men in the $100 gaiters or whatever from back in the day, y'all. That's not happening right now.
Right.
It's not happening right now. So there is a difference. Now, I'm not saying that mother doesn't put on a hat for the Zoom church meeting, but she don't have on her full dress and she didn't put on her pantyhose and her girdle and all that other good stuff to suck it all in. That would make her, perhaps not be so free. So again, there is some difference right now, and we have to kind of understand it and kind of figure out where do we go from here. So if the church menu, as you're stating, needs to change, well, what does that need to change to? And then more importantly, when you make that change, well, who is it appealing to? Who do you want to see that menu and be attracted to it? Because the menu at McDonald's is a whole lot different than the menu at a 5-star restaurant, in downtown Los Angeles. It's just totally different. So who are you appealing to? And what does that menu look like? And then what do you have to offer? And then what are you going to have also to keep people? Because you can make that menu look really, really great, but your service could stink. You know what I mean? The food could be lousy. What you're serving them up, it is not tasteful.
Right.
So that all goes together.
Mm-hmm.
It all goes together. And then again, when people come, that you're reaching out to, who's on this menu, again, is it takeout? Is it delivery service? Do you need to go deliver the message out into the world? Do you expect for them to come in and then take something back out? Is it something where it's a smorgasbord, where they can eat all they want? There's so many different things that are going on right now that churches have to think about,
right.
Because it's not business as normal. And it's not what any of us have dealt with in the past.
Right.
Or can even look back even somewhere in historical documents and say, oh, yeah, somebody else has gone through this, and this is how they overcame. So it's just interesting. What are your thoughts?
No, I think that you're right, that as they are reviewing and analyzing the data as far as what they are offering, they do need to focus on who they're offering it to.
Right.
Again, some of the things that you stated, I think, still points to changing, being traditional. We have to understand that overall, people's attention spans are like nothing right now.
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that would catch our eye and our attention, like you said, in a traditional setting of sitting there in a church building, will not necessarily fly on a digital platform, especially when that information, okay, I'm going to give you a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
You stated the call to worship, right? For those of you who does not know, you're new to the channel, Kafa and I grew up in the AME church. The call to worship was something that we said every Sunday, right? And what people do not necessarily understand the biblical references that the call to worship does or has. So, you lose some of that because you're used to saying that every Sunday. You're reciting it, and because of that, you're not really taking in the true meaning of some of these call responses that we do in some of these traditional churches.
Mm-hmm.
And I think without explaining that, having a virtual class on it, saying, hey, this is what this means. This is what it does. Refer to it in this, in these chapters of the Bible. Understand what the stories to it. I think without having that prior to the service, when people can understand what it really means, and they can take a little more to heart. Sometimes people don't want to get into that call and response. And also the other part of that call and response, because it is virtual, you don't get the response. You might have a call, but you don't have a response.
Mm-hmm.
Or not in the manner that you think you should. I watch too many preachers, they're still preaching as if people are sitting in the pews with them. It's almost as if like they're still waiting for someone to respond, or they need that response, and then they can feel like they can preach, or the Lord is finally working through them because they had that response. Not understanding that the word is still going forth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that as I keep I keep stressing, it's just traditionalism. I think traditions is the one piece that's holding a lot of ministries back. This is just, again, my own opinion, my own observations. I look at quite a few services on Sunday and Monday, reviewing them, seeing what people are doing, seeing what they are, what type of menu they have out there. Because so we're just talking about Sunday services. We're not even talking about how they are reaching the people during this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And the very non-traditional ways that they're doing communion, or the very non-traditional ways that they're doing baptism, the non-traditional ways of feeding the poor, and giving out money or whatever. There's so many different things that they're doing. And I'm looking at churches have job fairs and stuff, trying to find people that are not working currently.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so many different things that we could be doing as a church, instead of these little onesie twosies that we're having overall.
Right.
So that's where I'm saying that the menu needs to change up a little bit. The way we were doing business before is not going to happen now. That's not going to happen. And I am pretty sure that we're going to have a great migration, as far as church goes.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not, I don't know where those people are going to go, but we could foresee right now there's probably going to be a lot of churches that's going to have to shut down sooner or later. Wow. because they don't have the some people were relying too heavily on people that were coming to church in a building, and their funds are cut in half to almost 3/4 of what they were bringing in before.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that goes to the I don't want to be on social media type thing. I don't want to get on the internet. I don't, and that's not exclusive to seniors. I've noticed that also. That's not exclusive to seniors. That's a little bit of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit of everybody. So, I think that the menu needs to change. And one of the things that I think that Kafa and I have had our experiences. Yes, we grew up in AME Church, but we have been Free Will Baptist. We have been non-denominational. So we have a lot of different perspectives. Also, for those of you who don't know, we do have a company, Chisholm Group LLC, where we help small businesses grow. And in that, we deal with a lot of Episcopal churches, United Methodist churches, other Baptist churches. So we
Kojic,
Kojic,
yeah,
yes, Kojic, most definitely Kojic. So
don't forget her,
right? So we have a vast knowledge, and we're talking about people that's on different levels. We're not only talking about pastors, but we're talking about people that are international presidents and international figures and things like that. So the where we're coming from is not just a one-sided perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We're not in that place of being coerced or misled or however you want to word. Because I mean, we're like, yo, you misled by this. No, we're just using our own experiences. That's all.
So, I mean, I think with all of that we've said, we hope that individuals who are listening, such as pastors, leaders, lay folks, that you take this information and you begin to have that discussion with one another of what is it going to look like when and if you do return to the church building. What does it begin to look like, as Marie said, if it doesn't happen? Do you continue on with the virtual church? Do you continue on with the virtual learning, Bible study, and small groups? Do you continue to do your street ministry and your outreaching to the community? Because overall, that's who we're supposed to reach. It's wonderful for all of us to come together, save folks, and help us and help one another. But it's our duty to go out into the world. So how do we do that? And what does that menu look like so that we can be a blessing to others?
Right. I agree.
We have to be a blessing to others. And again, that's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of us. It's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of us. I can recall when we were at a non-denominational church, Maurice, and that was one of her goals, was for us to go out into the community. We were supposed to get water bottles and go and minister to those out there at playgrounds and, ball fields and things like that. But it was uncomfortable for some of us.
Right.
So we never got there.
Right.
We never made that step because the pastor was so then concerned with trying to make people feel comfortable with going out.
Right.
What story do I share? How do I minister to others? Then that fear came in for some people, like, what if they have something? And, so it's a lot to it. But again, I think we need to start that conversation of, with all of that, what do we do?
Yeah. I don't think that there's a menu necessarily for that because I believe that every church is going to have something different that they're going to have to attack and oversee and manage and things like that. So, but I think one of the things that is common is just the fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fear of the unknown. And once we get over that, as you stated way in the very beginning, God has not given a spirit of fear.
Fear, right. So
when we think about that, yes, it's the unknown, but understand that God has already ordered our steps. He already knows what's before us.
Mm-hmm.
If we continue to pray and fast and make sure that He is the leader of that and not some of these, I don't want to say selfish, but selfish desires of building a church, then God is going to bless it.
Right.
That's one of the things that we need to, not only preach to ourselves, but preach to all those persons that's going out there. Know that, hey, yes, there has to be, I think there should be some training when you go out there. But sometimes, though, you need people with the real raw to reach other types of people.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to a pastor not too long ago. He talked about how he can't grow a church. Why? Because everybody he knows is like him. Mm-hmm. It's just like him. Everybody he associates with is exactly like him. So how do you grow if that's who you deal with?
Right.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think, again, this is something that has just been going on for a while. I remember being a teenager in church, and we would have revivals, and we would have youth nights, and we'd have youth Sundays, and they would say, well, bring 2 friends, but it was a way of hopefully bringing in the unsaved. But all my friends were saved. All my friends went to church somewhere.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we just churched, visited from one church. Okay, I'm going to go to this person's church this Sunday and support them. And then another Sunday they have something, so I'll go there, or Friday night. And we just kind of had that kind of a family network. But in reference to those who were not saved, I didn't hang with them too much, I guess.
Right.
So And we have to kind of, again, as I said, get uncomfortable and stretch. Get uncomfortable. If I bring up the analogy of a plant, if we want a plant to grow, sometimes you have to take it out of the pot that it's already in,
right,
and put it in a whole nother pot,
right,
or put it in the ground somewhere. It's going to be uncomfortable because that's not where the plant is used to being. But in order for that plant to grow, it has to be repotted.
Right.
It has to be put in a new atmosphere. So I think that's what we all as Christians have to do. As believers, we have to all do it. Like, hey, take me out this pot. That I'm so used this conformity that I'm used to being in.
Right.
This little 4-inch pot. But if I want to grow, then you might have to take me and put me in a big pot. I'm going to look crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little old plant in this big old pot. But guess what? If I'm continuing to be fed right, if somebody continues to pour into my life, then I'm going to grow. My roots will grow.
Right.
And then with my roots growing, then I'll be able to branch out. And I'll tie this into our whole point of being the No Fruit Podcast. With all that, you can be then fruitful because you've grown.
Right.
And you'll produce fruit. And then that'll be a blessing to someone else.
Right.
So, again, family, go out there and be a blessing to somebody else. Stretch out a little bit more. Start thinking about what's happening with the church. Where are we going? Because it has to change. It has to change. And I think that's what is really going on with this pandemic, is that we have to change. We have to wake up and we have to change. Reese, what you got to say?
No, it's nothing. I can't say anything else after that. I think you ended it pretty well.
All right.
Because, just what Kafa said. There's nothing else to say after that. There's nothing else to say. But, I really thank y'all for tuning in with us.
Yes.
Thank you for holding off on us, holding off with us. We all have had to adapt to what's been going on. We've had kids in and out of school, to in and out, both of us working, not working, things like that. So it's just, we've had a whole lot of things going on. But what I will say is that God has continued to bless us and keep us throughout this whole thing.
Amen.
And I hope that he has done the same for you. Even though if you lost your job, understand that there's going to be something better on the other end, because that's just the way it's written. And
all it is was a change in the menu.
Right.
So that's all it was. Or it's just you coming out of that pot, going into another pot. So
right.
That's all it is. So to God be the glory.
And we thank y'all for tuning in with us. And we will see y'all
next time.
Next week. Peace.
God bless you.
This week's episode has come to an end. But the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.